In Egypt, around 1290 BC, the high priest Imhotep breaks strict laws forbidding other males from touching Ankh-Sunamun, the mistress of Pharaoh Seti, by having a relationship with her. Imhotep and Ankh-Sunamun kill the pharaoh once he learns about their relationship. Ankh-Sunamun kills herself with the purpose of being resurrected alongside Imhotep after Imhotep is carried away by his priests before the pharaoh's guards become aware of his involvement. Imhotep enters Ankh-Sunamun's crypt after her burial and takes her body. In order to start the resurrection ceremony, he and his priests travel across the desert to Hamunaptra, the city of the dead. But before the ritual could be finished, they are captured by Seti's guardians, and Ankh-Sunamun's spirit is returned to the underworld. Imhotep's priests are sacrificed and mummified alive as punishment for their sacrilege, while Imhotep himself is subjected to the Hamdi curse by having his tongue removed and being buried alive with a horde of flesh-eating scarabs. If he were to be resurrected, he would be cursed to become an immortal walking creature. His grave is guarded by the Medjai, who are descended from Seti's palace guards, and he is kept under strict observation throughout the years. He is hidden away in a sarcophagus beneath a statue of the Egyptian deity Anubis and buried in a grave under extreme security. Imhotep's immortality gave him the ability to create chaos on earth, and if he were ever released, this would be possible through to his abilities. At Hamunaptra in 1923, French Foreign Legion soldiers under the command of American Rick O'Connell mount a last-ditch defense against a horde of Medjai warriors. After the troops are slaughtered, O'Connell makes a last-ditch attempt to flee the city, only to be ambushed by a gang of Medjai. But as Imhotep's malevolent presence appears, they run away, leaving him for dead in the desert. Evelyn Carnahan, a Cairo librarian and aspiring Egyptologist, receives a complex box and map in 1926 from her awkward brother Jonathan, who claims to have found them at Thebes. The museum curator, Dr. Bey, rejects Hamunaptra as a myth and accidentally ruins the map while claiming that it points to the location of the lost city of Hamunaptra, where all of Egypt's treasure was once stashed. Jonathan admits that he actually stole it from an American, whose name is O'Connell, who is currently in jail and might know more about Hamunaptra. Rick claims to be familiar with the city's location due to his time spent serving in the Foreign Legion. In exchange for Evelyn saving Rick from being hanged, he agrees to tell her where Hamunaptra is. Evelyn is able to convince the prison warden to let him escape by promising him 25% of the looted treasure. However, the warden insisted on traveling along to secure his investment. They meet a team of American treasure hunters when they board a ship to start their journey to the city. They are led by renowned Egyptologist Dr. Alan Chamberlain and are under the command of Benny Gabor, a cowardly former Legion soldier who served with Rick and is also familiar with the location of the lost city. Soldiers from the Medjai military force invade the boat throughout the trip in search of Evelyn's box and the map. The expedition is able to repel them, but the map is lost, and the boat catches fire, forcing the entire party ashore. After becoming separated from the other treasure hunters, Rick, Evelyn, and Jonathan buy camels at a neighboring market. They arrive in Hamunaptra at the same time as the other party because Rick knows how to get there, but because of hostilities between the two parties, they begin exploring the city separately. The Anubis statue's legs have a chest that the Americans discover. The chest is booby-trapped, and as many of their carriers attempt to open it, they are all killed by acid spray. Evelyn, meanwhile, is looking for the Amun-Ra book, a solid gold book that is supposed to have the power to carry out murder. Just beneath the statue of Anubis, her team unearths a tomb. A sarcophagus is found inside the tomb, which can be opened using the key found in Evelyn's box. The prison warden suddenly runs passes while yelling in agony. Unbeknownst to the others, he had discovered a decorative scarab that actually stored a genuine scarab that ate its way into his brain and entered his body. The warden runs into a wall and instantly passes away. Rick and Evelyn are in the mood for romance after a peaceful evening spent outside when all of a sudden, the Medjai, led by Ardith Bey, begin a strike on both groups. By lighting a stick of dynamite and threatening to blow everyone up, Rick causes a standoff. Bey gives them one day to depart the city after warning them of the evil that resides there. Then ride away in his groups. The two expeditions choose not to heed his advice and carry on with their respective missions. The bloody remains of Imhotep are inside the opening sarcophagus. In the meantime, the American team opens the chest despite a warning on the lid that claims anyone who removes its contents would be killed. They find the Black Book of the Dead and canopic jars containing Ankh-Sunamun's preserved organs. While Dr. Chamberlain takes the book, the Americans each take a jar as booty. Benny flees the area out of fear of the curse. Evelyn steals the Book of the Dead from the Americans' tent at night, along with her key, which fits on it. She unintentionally causes Imhotep's mummified body to come to life by reading aloud a page. The first plague appears right away as a swarm of locusts invades the countryside and drives everyone inside the city. A massive army of scarabs escapes control and splits the gang up into tiny groups after devouring everything in its path. Imhotep attacks one of the Americans who gets lost and attacks him, stealing his eyes and tongue while partially restoring his body. Imhotep thinks to be Evelyn as Ankh-Sunamun when they both meet each other, but Rick shoots him before they all leave the tombs. Evelyn also runs into Imhotep. Again, Ardith and a group of Medjay soldiers come into contact with them. They are to blame for Imhotep's success, who will now bring death and ruin. He chastises them for doing. Until a method to kill him once more can be discovered, the only option is to leave the city. Benny is left behind while the group as a whole departs. He meets Imhotep as well, but manages to convince him to spare his life so that he might become his slave. Both teams go back to Cairo. Evelyn resolves to stay, arguing that since they were responsible for releasing the curse in the first place and must now stop Imhotep, Rick and the Americans should also leave Egypt. The next plague appears that afternoon, warning that Imhotep is nearby when water turns to blood. Imhotep is going to seek out the 4 men who stole the Book of the Dead and the canopic jars, the gang surmises. Imhotep has been driven to Cairo by Benny, who is assisting him in locating the Americans. In addition to discovering Imhotep slowly regenerating his own eyes, Rick and Jonathan locate the American whose eyes were stolen. They discover his dried-up body. Rick tries to murder Imhotep, but he is immune to kill and is simply frightened by the sight of a cat in the room, which causes him to flee in a dust storm. As the second widespread begins, violent hailstorms wreaking havoc on the city, Rick heads back to his rooms. While he and Jonathan go to tell Dr. Chamberlain, he locks Evelyn in her room to protect her from Imhotep. He then commands the other 2 Americans to stand watching. They see Imhotep killing Dr. Chamberlain outside, seizing the Black Book, and sending a swarm of flies out into the streets even though the doctor's room is vacant. Imhotep then moves on to Evelyn, enters the room, and eats the body of the American serving as the guard. By changing into sand, he sneaks into Evelyn's bedroom through the keyhole and makes an attempt at a kiss. He is frightened away by Rick, Jonathan, and the last American who enter by frightening him with a cat. The group visits the museum in the hopes that Dr. Bey, the curator, may provide a few suggestions. They are shocked to see him with Ardith Bey. The secret group sworn to thwart Imhotep's resurrection is revealed to include Dr. Bey as a member. He speculates that Imhotep would dread cats until he is completely immortal and believes that Imhotep wants to revive Ankh-Sunamun by using Evelyn's body to rejuvenate it. They have to go quickly since an unexpected solar eclipse occurs. Evelyn believes that if the Black Book of the Dead revived Imhotep, then the Gold Book of Amun-Ra would kill the High Priest once more. Evelyn concludes that the Gold Book must be buried beneath the statue of Horus after the gang discovers a tablet in the museum that describes where both books are. At that precise moment, a sizable throng of tribesmen encircles the museum while being possessed by Imhotep and covered in boils and sores. The heroes escape the museum in a car, but Imhotep captures and eats the last American before they can escape. Imhotep is finally caught by his followers and offers Evelyn the chance to travel with him in exchange for letting the others free. She concurs, but Imhotep retracts his statement as they are leaving. Dr. Bey risks his life by stopping the followers' stampede as the others escape through the sewers. Winston Havelock, a disillusioned World War I fighter pilot, agrees to fly Rick, Jonathan, and Ardith to Hamunaptra. In the midst of a sandstorm, Imhotep returns to Hamunaptra with Evelyn and Benny while being pursued by Rick's aircraft. Imhotep takes advantage of his supernatural abilities to produce a massive sandstorm, but while he was distracted with Evelyn, he only managed to allow the plane to make an emergency landing, killing only Winston. When Rick, Jonathan, and Ardith enter Hamunaptra, they find a brand new section full of the city's greatest treasures. They head to the statue of Horus where they discover the Book of Amun-Ra but shortly get into combat with Imhotep's revived mummy priests. Ardith, though, gives his life to free Rick and Jonathan when they are surrounded by the priests. Rick and Jonathan intervene just as Imhotep is about to sacrifice Evelyn after raising the mummified remains of Ankh-Sunamun. In order to murder Imhotep, Jonathan reads an inscription on the book, but this merely summons a troop of mummified guards who go after Rick. Meanwhile, Evelyn is attacked by the revived Ankh-Sunamun. Rick frees Evelyn from the group of mummies. Just before the guards shoot Rick, Jonathan successfully completes the inscription, gaining control of the troops and ordering them to kill Ankh-Sunamun. While Jonathan and Evelyn are successful in cracking open the Book of Amun-Ra, Imhotep directs his wrath onto Rick. When Evelyn pronounced the countercurse, Imhotep is going to kill Rick. When Imhotep's immortal soul is stripped from him, he turns mortal. Imhotep is fatally stabbed by Rick, quickly turning back into a mummy, and departing from the living world with a vow of vengeance. Benny unintentionally activates an antiquated booby trap while covertly bringing loot outside. Rick, Evelyn, and Jonathan rush for the door as Hamunaptra begins to crumble into the sand, with Jonathan dropping the gold book on the way. Benny stays behind and is captured and devoured by a swarm of flesh-eating scarabs. The heroes flee before Hamunaptra vanishes into the sand. Ardith, who has miraculously survived, awaits them outside and thanks them for their assistance. They ride off towards the sunset on camels with Benny's treasure. Well, that's all for today's video. We hope you enjoyed it, and please support us by subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to get notification for new videos every we post.